So I have really five hills that I'm absolutely down on. So mine are 100% strong MFA, and for me that means YubiKeys, keys, right? Every single user has a YubiKey. Second is no BYOD, right? So, and I'm talking about like external access for stuff, like a phone running Outlook, okay, right? Third is 100% coverage of EDR, right? My EDR tool. Fourth is rapid patching of any and all external vulnerabilities. I don't care what it is. If it's outside, it's patched. 100%, right? And fifth for me is
Welcome to Blue Team Diaries, the podcast that celebrates and honors the professionals who work tirelessly to defend their organizations and those who build tools to support defenders. In each episode, host Peter Manev invites his guests to share their stories and experiences in a fun and lighthearted conversation. Blue Team Diaries is sponsored by Stamus Networks, a global provider of network-based threat detection and response solutions. Learn more at stamus-networks.com.
Hi, Brent Deterding is an executive CISO who enables AFNI and his global workforce of 11,000 plus to support their clients safely and securely. He leads a team of over 20. Brent is a spirited and thoughtful conversationalist who does not shy away from challenging topics. Brent and his wife of 20 plus years share a passion for adoption, foster care, and leading youth. Hi, Brent Deterding. Welcome, sir.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Much appreciated, much appreciated. So let's dive straight into it. Can you share a cool project you've been working on recently?
Sure. So I'm in a unique position in that I have no pain.
Okay.
I'm actually returning budget back to my company that I don't need. So as a result, I get to work on a whole lot of things that are important but not terribly urgent. And that is a really, really good place to be. So some of the important things that we're working on are kind of boring, blocking and tackling stuff, moving file shares, cleaning up SharePoint permissions, all that. But I also get to do some kind of cool stuff with like Copilot, kicking tires and that, seeing out how we can develop that, as well as moving outside of cyber a bit. So one thing that is kind of the coolest thing I'm working on right at the moment is really putting the bones around an enterprise risk management program. So outside cyber, but that involves things like, hey, let's dive into payroll processes in the Philippines and make sure that they are resilient. Okay. But that is not really a cyber thing, but it's definitely enterprise risk. So being able to form how we think about and how we bucketize and how we quantify, not even quantify, a little bit, different risk and how we think about things so that we can all have the same language of going, hey, that's a tier 1 risk versus, that's tier 3. And tier 3 might be important, but tier 1's more important and probably more urgent. So that's some of the stuff that I've been working on recently, and it's very satisfying. It's very cool to work on that.
Much appreciate you sharing that. So, question out of curiosity, something that stuck up with me, and I think with some of our viewers potentially. You said you're returning budget back, and so in security operations, IT operations, this is not that well heard of. So I just wanted to make sure I heard it correctly. How is that possible?
So I came into this role about 2 years ago, little over 2 years, and we were in some 3-year contracts that I worked for a vendor for 19 years, right? SecureWorks. And I got really, really good at catch bad guys early in the kill chain. As one does, right? With thousands of data points and customers and clients and all that kind of stuff.
Well done. Congrats. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I came in, I was able to identify some things that I was like, okay, well, I know that there are better ways to go about doing this, or I can do this and avoid this. So, for example, now I can say things that I could not say 2 years ago. Now, 100% of my users have YubiKeys. That's pretty awesome. If every single person has YubiKey and must use it, how much do I care about really awesome AI generated phishing? Approaching zero. Right? I mean, okay, right? So as a result, do I need to spend money on X? So significant risk reduction is simple, easy, and cheap. And
Okay.
as a result, I can sidestep a lot of other problems, and I can sidestep some spend. So as some of the 3-year contracts are expiring, I'm able to free that money up and give at least a chunk of it back to the business. And we can go do whatever. I mean, we're expanding, we're whatever, but I don't need it. I don't need it to accomplish my mandate. My mandate is to mitigate material risk other than nation states. And nation states are going to have a really, really hard time. I've accomplished that and done so that we can talk about anything. Like I evaluate a million things all the time, but it's a lot of those things are $10 solutions to my $5 problems,
Okay.
right? And I'm not in the habit of spending $10 to fix a $5 problem. And so as a result, a whole lot of stuff fits in that bucket for me. And I'm able to return money to my company. Now I could spend it, but I don't need to. And I'm a good steward of the resources entrusted to me. So I'm not going to do that.
Excellent. All right. Thank you for the feedback. That's actually refreshing and quite a different and unorthodox view, shall we put it that way? So that's very cool.
Eventually, I might have to go and say, like, y'all don't need me anymore. It's kind of weird, but I think I would be the first CISO to do that. But I'm not opposed. So,
I highly doubt. I think people of your character will need it. Yeah.
Well, in my previous life, right, as security, I scripted myself out of a job like 4 or 5 times in my career, and it always worked out. So when I'm able to work myself out of a job, it has always worked out for me. And I guess that's kind of always been a little bit of a goal in the back of my head, is like make it such that I'm not needed. I don't know that I'll get there with CISO, but maybe. I don't know. I'm not opposed to the idea. I think that's ideal, really. I think it's ideal. Like, okay, you don't need me. I actually mitigated the risk. So
not a bad aim. Not a bad aim. Absolutely. Well, you mentioned state actors. You mentioned that you were, at least a few years back, and for a long time back, sort of in the trenches, so to speak, and all that stuff. Do you mind sharing with us, with the audience, like an oh crap, close call moment where you were nearly, something bad happened, you were nearly breached, or you mentioned avoid disaster?
Sure, I got one for you. And this is from my current. I have a million from back then, because you're always dealing with clients coming in, right? And so when you have clients calling in, and back then it wasn't ransomware, right? In 2004 or 5, whatever, it wasn't ransomware. It was the firewall, and we managed firewalls for, I don't know, a couple thousand firewalls, many hundreds of clients, right? And you have someone who calls up and no video, right? And they're having the worst day of their year, if not their career, for whatever reason, right? And so when you deal with that on a semi-regular basis, even sometimes it's a short-term freak out, sometimes it's a longer-term freak out, sometimes it's like they're a brand new client and all of a sudden like the world blows up and you're like, okay, well, the skill set that you learned there is incident handling, is being an incident commander, right? And that turned out to be super useful for me now, because when I came here, I had been a CISO here for like 3 months, and we're starting to get attacked. And long story short, like I had to go into incident commander mode again. No material impact, in fact, very minimal impact to my company. But the threat group that we were facing off against is Scattered Spider. In 2022, they teed off against all BPOs, which is business process outsourcer, which is what we do, right? And all the write-ups on CrowdStrike are about the other BPOs that they tore up. They ruined 4 of my evenings. Like, totally screwed up 4 evenings. But that's it, right? But I had been here like 3 seconds. I didn't have time to implement big chunks of my program. So I had to come in and deal with what was here, which was not bad by any means. Like, it was not bad, but you still have to come in. You've got to do the incident commander thing. I got on the call and said, hey guys, listen, none of you have worked with me for more than a few months, and I've only interacted with some of you a couple times ever. Please understand, I need to go into incident commander mode, and that is going to involve some very direct and blunt direction, and I need you to give me an amount of trust that I may not have earned with you yet. And the CIO, who's my peer, was like, we got it. Go for it. I'm like, all right. And so I did. I started firing off. I did the incident commander thing. I get on with my client. They have a big, huge IR team. I get on. It's like talking to people I worked with for the past 20 years. I was like, all right. And so boom, boom, boom. I went through. I did my thing, and everything was fine. Everything was fine. And then I kind of came out of that mode, and I was like, all right. So I like to think I'm a pretty joyful, agreeable, kind person, but I needed to get some stuff done there. So I hope we're okay. And everyone's like, no, you're fine. And I mean, I'm still kind, I'm still respectful, but it's also very, very blunt, right? To be the incident commander. But that kind of oh crap moment is, I've been here 3 months. I don't have big chunks of my program in place yet, and I got to deal with this right now. Okay, and it worked out fine. It worked out fine because I have a fantastic team. We have a fantastic team, InfoSec, IT, etc. Great relationships with our clients, effective communication under fire. It all worked out well. It all worked out exactly how it's supposed to work out. But it's still it's still the thing when you get on, you're like, what just happened? And at the same time, like, I'm trying to figure out like some of the acronyms or terms and various teams or whatever. I'm like, hold on, you're gonna have to explain that to me. Like, what does that team do? Okay, okay, that's and so you're like learning the environment as you go
as
in.
you go, yeah.
Yeah, it's which is not unlike
it's a unique experience.
Not unlike what every incident commander who gets dropped into a situation does, right? When you parachute in, like, you just get dropped in. You're like, okay, I don't know these things, so help me out here, guys.
I hear you. So, all right, maybe a personal question. I don't know. You said 4 nights. You mentioned earlier on you had 4 nights without sleep. Was this like 4 consecutive nights, or was it?
No.
Okay.
So, there's a reason that the P in APT is persistent, right? They don't go away.
Right.
So, and you also have this situation where it's like, okay, so you sit back and you go, if I were a bad guy, what would I do? And you go and you talk around, you figure out where the bodies are buried, and you're like, I would do this. And you're like, well, let's plug that hole. And the change is going in on a Wednesday morning. And Tuesday at night, guess what happens? You pop on that exact thing. And you're like, okay. But part of it is also like, not only are we going to plug that, but it's like, okay, well, what would we do if ... And you figure it out so that you're able to do that. Well, so some of those things are, like almost brute force. You're like, cha. Like you block them and you terminate stuff and you do whatever. And then you always have to answer like, okay, what did anyone touch? What did they do? And are we really, really sure of that? So it might be like a couple hours in the evening of like incident commanding kind of thing. But then it might be like 4 days of investigation after the fact and making sure like everything, like we're covering all of our bases. And I mean, you iterate, and it's Scatter Spider was they're not schlubs. especially if they get in and you don't notice. So the biggest determining factor there was how quickly and decisively you evicted them. And we operated very quickly, very decisively, and they moved on, more or less.
So you mentioned,
yeah,
one of the things you mentioned, the P, right? Persistence in APTs, persistence in all that stuff. Does this, in your view, in your experience, does this mean that they're kind of constantly watching the organization or the person or things like that? Is that part of the persistence?
I assume that people are efficient, right?
Okay.
So they're going to take the path of least resistance, right? And but at the same token, if someone is really, really, really good, they don't necessarily need to bring their A game to get in. So if they can do the real basic stuff, they'll do the real basic stuff. So what I think we saw is them just ratchet it up from like, oh, okay, we'll try this. Oh, okay, this. Okay. And all of a sudden they're like SIM swapping my VPs and junk like that. And you're like, oh, okay, well, no, it didn't work, but it made my VP's life a little inconvenient for a day or two. But they ramp it up over time, right? So yeah, they're persistent. Yeah, they're always watching. But at a certain point, I think they kind of go like, well, okay, we're going to go try something else. And now,
as you said, path of least resistance.
I see it in different ways, right? We did a whole lot of really, really good things cyber wise. And so, but it's things like bribe people, fraud, whatever. It's other avenues. It's not like, hey, we're gonna try to pop your MFA. Come on, man. I shut that down a long time ago.
So. Okay. So yeah, as I agree with you for sure. I mean, I think they shouldn't be underestimated because people and people, there's all sorts of people everywhere. So someone determined, good or bad side of the fence, doesn't matter. So yeah, definitely agree with you there on the feedback. All right, since we're talking about you go into command mode or you go into incident response mode or command mode or being a CISO and things like that. If you can, that's a tough question, I guess, but what is your go-to tool if you can sum up like, is there one tool or two tools that you can't do without it every day, for example?
Yeah, so I have really 5 hills that I'm absolutely down on, right? Like we do these things or I put my badge on the table and go, I cannot succeed here. And it's really kind of 4 and I've kind of added a 5th. And I'm not saying that like if I was at a different environment, I might have different hills, right? But I think everyone should have those things. Like we either do this or I cannot succeed and I'm gone, right? So mine are 100% strong MFA, and for me that means YubiKeys, right? Every single user has a YubiKey. Second is no BYOD, right? So, and I'm talking about like external access for stuff, like a phone running Outlook, okay, right? Third is 100% coverage of EDR, right? My EDR tool. Fourth is rapid patching of any and all external vulnerabilities. I don't care what it is. If it's outside, it's patched 100%, right? And fifth, for me, is privileged access management. So every single user with any amount of elevated privileges goes through my PAM solution, right? So those are my real big things. Everything else we can talk about. Those things, I'm not talking about, right? Like it's just the way it is.
Non-negotiable.
Right? We're doing this. Yeah. We're doing this. There's no debate. And but what you notice is that those things, in the grand scheme of things, fall under the simple, easy, cheap umbrella, right? So if I can do those things, then I dramatically cut down my risk, right? Like if every single user must have a YubiKey, that works really, really well. And if every single device that can do anything is inherently my device and it's running my EDR, pretty darn good, right? Even if I assume that those aren't the case and I have bad guy, internal advanced bad guy, but all elevated permissions are rotated vaulted, all that, like not memory, not anything. Okay, I'm doing pretty darn good because when I read like the Verizon data breach report or what my coworkers for 20 years, I know what causes claims. I know where people actually suffer loss, and that is from ransomware, funds transfer fraud, and business email compromise. And the common vectors for those things are phishing, stolen credentials, external vulnerabilities. So if I take care of those things, I'm doing pretty good. Not saying that's all I do, but if I knock out those things, I'm doing pretty good.
So these will be like the 5 main things that you have to lock down also.
Yeah.
And
if I had to pick one, honestly, like I'm really, really partial to YubiKeys. I really like YubiKey a lot. So like that's like that's the number one thing. But I caught bad guys early in the kill chain for 20 years. So I'm pretty partial to EDR and all that kind of stuff too, right? Which is that's a different philosophical conversation. But like, I like that for bulk bad guy stuff, right?
Sure. The 5 things that you mentioned, they're, I'm guessing, cross infrastructure, agnostic type of thing. You mean it doesn't matter cloud, on-prem, off-prem, things like that.
No,
you can cover every single angle with those things.
Yeah,
or most of it rather.
I mean, there's these like tangential things, right? Like like I don't have legacy stuff around. They're like, why don't we have legacy stuff? I'm like, well, it seems like a really bad idea. Like, oh, that's easy to say. I'm like, kind of easy to implement too. I mean, I don't know. I'm like, oh, well, you're lucky. It's like, well, yes, but I interviewed to go work at an environment in which I could succeed, right? And so things like, hey, this is an old thing. It doesn't make any sense. Let's turn it off. Okay. So that takes a little bit of time. Okay. But even things like, hey, let's move all on-prem file shares up into OneDrive where we have E5 licensing and preview and all this kind of stuff. Okay. Let's make sure that every single thing, at least everything that anyone cares about that has any significant anything in it, is tied in with SSO. Okay. Well, so like, is SSO a hill I will die? Well, no. I mean, it's kind of like having air conditioning, right? I mean, it's like you just do some things, right? You don't have legacy boxes. Automatically patch 95% of stuff. Do all these like tangential things. Yeah, sure, that's fine. But a lot of that is kind of IT stuff. A little bit. I mean, I'm not saying that these things are not important. I'm just saying, like,
Sure.
If we go and say, hey, if we don't do this, are you going to quit? No, I'll work around it, right? But if we don't do, if we do not agree with strong MFA for 100% of users, I'm gone. I'm not. Nah, forget that.
That's the foundation. So yeah. Okay. So the whole strategy.
Everyone has their own line. Everyone has
sure.
The environment's different. Okay, fine. I'm not judging. You do you, boo. I'm fine. I'll do me. For me?
Sure. And, well, it's definitely not easy because adversaries, as you said, the P in APT is persistent. IT technology is always evolving, as are threats, as is anything else. You mentioned sleepless nights or ruined nights. Sure thing, you're preaching to the choir here for sure. No problem. That's part of the job we do. In all those lines, that line of thought, in all that as a background, if you had one piece of advice to give somebody thinking of becoming a cyber defender, what would it be? It's like, here's the one thing you need to take into account.
I'll give 2 answers.
All right.
I'll give one if you want to be a CISO, and the second is if you want to break into cyber. And I saw a friend of mine, guy I know, Ira Winkler, posted this yesterday, I think, and it's fantastic. And that is that entry-level cyber jobs abound. They just might not be called what you think they are. They're system admin, their help desk, their network admin, their things like that. They're adjacent to cyber, and they are a fantastic way to get into cyber, right? So, like, I, my path was a little bit different given the time and all that. I mean, being a cyber expert in like 1999, it was like being a doctor in 1700. Like the body of knowledge was this big, so like there weren't that many of us, right? Um, it was like I knew people because I knew like 10 people. Um, Things are a little bit different now, but like adjacent to cyber roles can be outstanding foundational knowledge for those people. So I would advise to consider those roles as adjacent to cyber. My right hand man did exactly that. He got his foot in the door as a collections agent, moved from that into IT, moved from IT into security. Right? He's doing fantastic. Right? Now, for CISOs, my little magic wand thing is for everyone to focus on probable more than possible. Right? You can go to DEF CON and you can walk around and you can get really, really freaked out about the sky is falling with all the nasty things that are possible. But what is probable is a different thing. Because let me give an example. If you're a CISO and you are worried about someone having physical access to your network and moving laterally in whatever means, but you don't have MFA enabled for all your users, like you're ignoring the probable thing in lieu of the possible thing. Now, if you're Boeing or the NSA or whatever, well, okay, now you're in a different ballgame there. But the people who are in that situation pretty much know they're in that situation, right? The rest of us, like a lot of the stuff, look at, like I said, the Verizon data breach report. What affects people? Where do people actually get lost, right? Ransomware, Disney, Montgomery's funds transfer fraud via phishing, stolen credentials, external vulnerabilities. Can you take care of those three things? Yep. Can even a really teeny tiny small company take care of those three things? Yep. Pretty easily, right? So take care of those two things, then we can talk. Then you can talk. But like take care of that low-hanging fruit first, but focusing on what is probable first. And then you can worry about all the various like cool, crazy hacker whatever. And here's the other thing. You don't control all them. Like, you don't control the bad guys. You don't control, in fact, a lot of that is both unknowable and uncontrollable. You do absolutely control your protection and your resilience, right? And take that not only in cyber, right? You want to be a badass CISO, look and say, what are our critical business functions and how can I help make them more resilient? Whether it's cyber or not. Because things that seem intuitive to IT and security are like business continuity, DR planning, backups, MFA, all this kind of stuff. Other people in other areas of the business don't necessarily think in those terms. And by helping them think in resiliency terms, you are helping advance your business, right? So that is a prime way of being in the business, not like I always hesitate when I say things like, oh, advise the business. It's like, well, I am the business. Like, it's all me, right? Whether it happens to be like, there's an exec in charge of finance stuff, and I'm the exec in charge of cyber stuff, right? But it doesn't mean that we can't, like, it's risk, right? It's a risk, is it material risk? And so, yeah, I'd say that's a pretty big one. Focus on probable, not possible.
So would that mean like, and thank you very much for those are some great insights. Would that mean that actually focusing on probable, not impossible, is it actually not all in about minimizing the risk with respect to your own deployment environment, so to speak, or there's more to it?
Well, so there's certainly something. Yes, it's all about minimizing the risk to a level acceptable to the business, right?
Okay.
Now, but here's where that starts, because risk appetite and risk discussion and cyber risk quantification. That's a big ball of stuff to think through and process and all that. That's fine. Start with material risk. Start with stuff that, like, I can totally see this happening tomorrow, and it would be really freaking bad. If it can happen tomorrow and be really devastatingly bad, that's a dumpster fire. Go fix it. Go put it out. You don't need to talk about it. You don't need to do a risk assessment. You don't need NISTs. You don't need any of that. Don't need any of that. Go fix the dumpster fire. That's it. Right? Start there. And then when you can work down, all of a sudden you look up and you're like, okay, nothing is urgent. There are plenty of important things. And at that point, it's like, is this a bad idea? No, it's not a bad idea. Let's do it. Okay. Hey, what about this? Is that no, let's knock that out too. Order doesn't really matter at that point. You're just like stop the bleeding, solve the problem. Stop the bleeding, solve the problem. And you do that over a reasonable period of time, and you get to sit in a pretty darn good place because you get to go, hey, I'm pretty solid.
We achieved something, yeah, absolutely.
And then what's also awesome is you get to go, when you're not in firefighting mode, right? You get to go to other people, be they external to your company, internal to your company, whatever, and you go, where are the bodies buried? And if you were a bad guy who wanted to get this information, what would you do? Think about that. Think about that more. Like, just think about it. And then you meet with these people every now and again, maybe once a month, maybe once a quarter, whatever. And you're like, hey, can you come up with any way? Like, what should I worry about? Ask that. Ask good vendors, right? I mean, with a boatload of vendors. They're like, okay, I believe X because of A, B, and C. Do you know about D, E, and F? If you do, tell me. And let's talk about it. And in doing so, that strengthens or weakens my opinions, right? Additionally, I look at things, I get probably about 2 things a day, 2 to 5 things a day in an executive briefing based on what's happening in the news, Wall Street Journal, all that. And I think about those pretty deeply. It only takes a few minutes, right? And then I also look at all the, like, what's popping in the news, RSS feed kind of thing. And I go through and I say, okay, I don't care. Do I care? No, I don't care. And you keep on doing that such that you're always committing effort to what am I missing? And when you have a lot of people asking the similar kind of question about what are we missing, over time you get to have some level of confidence that you're covering a whole lot of stuff.
You're spreading your role. Yeah, absolutely. You're getting a lot more knowledge in as well about what's going on out there, as opposed to being in a silo. Absolutely. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be overstaying my welcome. Final question. Would you like to give a shout out to any mentors that helped you out?
Oh, I have a lot of mentors. I'll tell you 2 that I've talked to you recently. I am a big fan of Peter Schwacker. He's down in Mexico, Nearshore Cyber. He's awesome. And Malcolm Harkins, former CISO of Intel. He's an advisor. I'm a big fan of both of them. I mean, there's a lot more people that I could mention, but those are just 2 that I've talked to in the past 1 or 2 weeks that I really like. Both of them have been, they're kind of the elder statesmen, I guess you would say. I mean, they've been there and done that way before I was. And with both of them, I was kind of able to go, hey, I think of this, but am I just being naive? And they're like, no, you go, you do that. I'm like, okay. So they've been very validating and been able to help me kind of tune in my thinking and messaging around a couple of pretty important things. So very thankful for those 2 guys.
Much appreciated. Brent Deterding, thank you very much for being with us. Thank you very much for all the insights. Keep doing what you're doing. And good speed with the blue team and cyber defenders. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for celebrating and honoring the defenders with Blue Team Diaries. You can find this and all our previous episodes on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you're interested in learning more about our sponsor, Stamus Networks, please visit stamus-networks.com.